Hey, Silas here. In this video presentation, it's going to be some visual aids. So if you normally listen to these things that's in the back, I would suggest that with this one, you actually end up watching the video. But I'm going to be discussing certain topics to do with cultural fashions that involve religion, faith, belief systems, and things like that. So understanding the general climate that we live in, that might trigger and offend some people, but I ask you to make it to the end of the video before you kind of make any judgments or go to the comment section. But at the end of it, I would really like to get your input and things. So, adult mentality required in these things. I think these are important things to talk about. These are some of my opinions and some things I've seen from people. And I'm also going to be asking to get other people's opinions and beliefs and ideas and feelings about these things to better educate myself and other people, so maybe we can just be more informed and kind of understand why there might be some confusion or why I might feel a certain way about these things and why other people might feel a certain way. And maybe if we just talk more, communicate more, things will get better. Okay, into the video. In the field or practice of character design, it is often advised to focus on what the silhouette of the finished character is going to look like. In general, our eyes get information on different characteristics of that character from this simple blacked out shape. Our ability to get information about what we look at from just that simple shape is not limited to two-dimensional media of made-up characters, but also works for actual people in our lives, whether you're looking at a photograph or meeting them in person. Now keep this in mind as you watch the speed drawing that's going on the screen right now, and will be going on throughout this entire video presentation. It's just of a simple depiction of a female body. Now I'll double up the actual model of it and create different silhouettes as the video keeps going. To begin with, I'll start with just one body in the nude, or just with no clothing on, and another of what an average mid-20s woman in the West may wear as casual attire. Now I'm going to base this off of just the basic things you see at public schools, like public high schools, public colleges, universities. Just go walk in a mall and you'll kind of see this thing, or just in a westernized city. I know some cultures and places that this might not be considered that modest, but this is the kind of average thing that's out there. So that's going to be also part of what we're discussing in this video. So before continuing and talking about, is this modest, is this oppression, why do I feel a certain way when I see things like hijabs, or why do people have these conversations around different kind of outfits that women wear and the emotions and feelings that come around it, I'd like to show you guys these 4 other silhouettes just to see how fast it takes you to pick up the information around just a simple silhouette. So first we'll start with the symbol or mascot, well, symbol, head character, lead character of a global media company that does a lot more than just media. This company has recently purchased some big intellectual properties out there and has a lot of true fans very mad about what they're doing with these intellectual properties. One thing I would like to see would be maybe a crossover between this character and a character that's normally chased by, or in many cases instigates painful situations for a feline named Tom, and this other character that's really intelligent and has these world domination dreams and hangs out with this far less intelligent but oddly capable character named Pinky. I think that would be a really cool crossover to have these characters together. So next is a character from a long-running, possibly the longest-running TV show in the United States of America that was initially made by a creep that allegedly has very crusty feet. There's also a clown in the show named Krusty who, from now on, will always remind me of crusty feet, no matter what ends up with these allegations. The people involved with the show and running the show now recently released some top-level cringe about a squad of 4 politicians going up against United States President Donald J. Trump. And that little short made me think about how in the show, there seems to be an attempt to match the skin color of every race that shows up in the show. Even the white-skinned Asian people, like the Japanese and Chinese, the ones with just the more white skin, you see them have that matching. But the white people are actually yellow-washed, which of course shows that the war on white people is real and has been going on for entirely too long. So next we have this really fast character from a cartoon that used to be made up of many little shorts. I think the longest one would be maybe 2 or 3 minute sequence of things going on. But this show took many liberties with the reality that's actually based in the show, and the amount of violence in it was really high. If I recall, there wasn't even a word spoken by any of the characters in this whole show. And these kind of shows make me wonder why some people my age look at the shows that are going on now and criticize them and say, oh, these are absurd. How are kids watching this? How are kids finding this entertaining? And this is this show. This is earlier, not even talking about later things like Ren and Stimpy that just take things to the absurd. This stuff has been happening on TV for quite a while. Now, the last silhouette here is a character from a Disney movie that just got a live action remake. Even though I found the trailer to be entertaining enough after that first CGI slip up that they went back in and changed, which is pretty cool that something comes out that they can go back in an entire film and change it before the movie actually comes out. Pretty cool with that. But I personally don't have a problem with Disney remaking any of these movies. Because if you're 8 to 13 right now, which I think is around the target demographic for these films, you probably won't be like me and have actually watched the original movie, watched the sequels, played the video games, and watched the TV shows that this character starred in. And when I did this decades back, I knew it was actually a show or a character that was mostly based on an old Arabian folk story about 40 thieves. And one more thing about that war on white people thing from before. The actor that initially played this blue character in the cartoon in an amazing way in the original animation, if he was still alive, would they have expected him to play this character that is from Arabian folklore? Since, according to some of these people, having a redhead mermaid with a Caribbean singing crab friend is part of white people culture because they were inspired by a story written by a Dutchman. So that's it for the silhouettes of these characters. How long did it take you to recognize some of these characters? Do you think you'd have recognized them faster if I started drawing it from a different angle, a different place in it? Now, every time you see a silhouette, the shapes and makeup of these characters can also evoke certain feelings and memories connected to the first times or the multiple times we actually viewed and experienced these characters. And some of the most successful animations, cartoons, and comics and other creations like this will have a varied size of silhouettes of the principal characters. And the interactions between these different sizes and shapes kind of work in interesting ways. These shapes and sizes are taken from observations of reality, and they cross the language barrier. It can be understood by a kid in United States of America and also an old lady in China. They can just see the general shape of a character and be like, oh, that's the big, strong, lumbering character in this. So emotions and character traits such as a brave person, a fast character, a peppy little person, a sensual female, these can be kind of told from just a simple silhouette. Now this carries on to humans as well, as I mentioned before. It's not just limited to characters in 2 dimensions, even people we see in person. So though I disagree with the whole body positivity thing, saying, oh, there's no difference in human body sizes, it's nothing to notice, why are you actually picking between one and the two? The variation is not as striking as it would be in something like One Piece, where you have characters whose head is the size of their entire body, or you have some with legs 4 times the length of their torsos, or you have giants the size of skyscrapers. Then you have mermen and fishmen of all sorts of aquatic animals that are actually 2 different groups that live in this place beneath the ocean. And then you even have giant mermaid princesses. And while we're on the topic, is Shirahoshi anyone's best girl? So despite not having such extremes in the human body, myself from personal experience as someone with a larger frame who has had a life kind of bouncing between different levels of health when it comes to body composition of muscle to fat ratio, there are some pronounced differences and reactions that different body shapes will give to the person both that has the body and also the person viewing the body. So most of us can see. We use our eyes. We walk around. We have the ability of sight. And most of us wear clothes at most times when they're out in public. There might be some people who are like 50% of the time at home, they're just sitting around nude. But most people are actually wearing clothes. So when it comes to reactions, the silhouette is informative of the actual physical body itself, but it's also how much of that physical body are we actually seeing. So with that idea of the skin, how much skin is shown, that's going to be included in this. So a bare leg is not the same as seeing someone's leg in nylons, whether they sheer or just completely dark. Even though depending on a person's personal preferences, they could possibly find the nylons more enticing. And it's actually occasionally used in manga. Sometimes it's done in a more restrained, attractive nature, and sometimes it's a bit ecchi, which is that fan service kind of sexual in that kind of way. And sometimes it could get to outright smut, which shouldn't be surprising with anyone that just has a basic idea of just all sorts of manga that's out there. Talking to the point where it's like characters rubbing their faces and stalking legs and all kinds of odd things. Just don't do an internet search for stalkings and manga. You'll find some horrific things out there. So in general, there's a manga for about anything you can think of. There's something out there. So in these speed drawings, I'm going to take into account the amount of skin that's shown in these different outfits. And this may help us get more of an understanding of what both the viewer or the wearer considers to be modest, inappropriate, fitting, or what they consider is worth shaming someone for, or what kind of things limit the female body as just a general form of oppression. So as sentient beings with this whole skin factor, we also have our intellect that plays a part in how we react to what we see. And we factor in the purpose and location of the different outfits that we see and wear. A good example of this that you guys have probably thought of or has come up in conversation before is the difference between lingerie and swimsuits. So for example, imagine you and your friends are at some weekend beach house that you guys all rented. You stumble into this room and one of your friends is in there and she's just changed into a basic support bra and some boycott panties, but they're made out of lace. That may be more of an embarrassing situation, even if you had just been on the beach with this girl and a bunch of other friends, a bunch of other people that were wearing bikinis that actually showed more skin than the bra and boycott panties you just found her in. So, even though a sports bra and spandex leggings worn to the gym may give a silhouette that shows far more of the female form than an oversized pajama tee in someone's bedroom, the actual effect on the person viewing it may be entirely different. So now let's move into context. Where does the choice of the woman wearing the outfit come in? Where do the social expectations change from what should be and could be worn? What considerations, if any, should be given to what the viewer feels about what's being worn? So think of your typical Victorian fashion. The full body dresses, the corsets, the hats, the umbrellas, the gloves, just that full kind of outfit you can think of from the books and films and material that you see from that time. Now let's jump forward in time to the 1950s. Did the women who were driving that stereotypical American 50s style look to the past of Victorian times and the times between then and when they lived and thought, oh, that corset is entirely too oppressive, I have to have this freedom? Did the 1920s flapper times kind of get absorbed into it and bring this less oppressive fashion style? Now, think about it this way. Let's say we jump back to the Victorian age. So imagine one of those upper middle class or upper class Victorian households. You're a woman, you're hosting a dinner party for your husband and different work associates. One of these gentlemen comes in and he's accompanied by a woman who's wearing your typical 1950s style dress. So we're talking the polka dots, arms mostly bare, the collarbones showing, the knee-high but flowing and loose dress with no supports under it, small hand purse, no hat, sheer stockings. What would you think about this person? What would your other fellow Victorian ladies think about this person? Would the thoughts be, there goes a liberated woman? Or would it be, how dare he bring a lady of the night with him? Now let's time travel to the late 80s or early 90s kind of time. I imagine this is a corporate setting. Here we find ourselves with a high-achieving female executive who is having a lunch meeting with a potential partner company. So the men on her team are all dressed in their power suits. And I think power suits were also for men. Yeah, I think they were. But she's got hers on too. You know, the whole stuffed broad shoulder blazer type of look, a sensible cream blouse under it, a sleek Samsonite attaché briefcase by her side. The restaurant is close to their workplace and they get in a bit early. It was also picked because it's one of those places that caters to this kind of crowd. The place where if you have to ask for the dress code, you probably shouldn't be in the place. So you sit there, settle down, order a first round of drinks as they wait for their other group. So shortly, the group they're meeting comes in. And at the head of this group, there is a woman wearing a typical 1950s dress. This is more a summer dress, flowery, about ankle length. She's wearing a sensible spring-colored sweater, and her hair is kind of tied up with a flower in it. And to finish this all off, she has a pearl necklace on. Now at this point, can you imagine the woman in her false shouldered jacket leaning over to her friend and saying, I didn't know we were supposed to bring our secretaries with us. So there we have it. Time and function matters. We also get that just because someone dresses in one way in public doesn't mean they dress that same way in private. This is something that I read about, I think, in the Sex and the City movie. I don't know if it was the first or the second. I think it might have come out, I think it's people writing it. They probably had a different idea of why they were writing it, although I'm kind of suspicious that I think some of these people may be writing these things to kind of warn people about what's actually going on. Because in this part, they had the women wearing the full body coverings that you typically see in the Middle East and Muslim majority countries. So there's a scene where these Muslim Arab women are in private with Carrie and the rest of her American friends, and they take off those coverings, those clothes, and they show that underneath all this, they're just as focused on fashion and brands and makeup and all these other things that I consider to be somewhat shallow, and some people may consider to be somewhat shallow, as your typical, stereotypical upper middle class woman in the West. So next I'm going to move on to the cultural aspect and familiarity that that brings of different outfits and this amount that we are in contact with certain outfits. Now speaking about the whole contact thing, think of those uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. Even the ones that have been contacted in more temperate climate places like in Africa and Australia, not in Europe and places like that due to the temperatures. But you have adults walking around in essentially just a loincloth. Now, when the females are walking around with their nipples shown, people are not sitting there thinking it's a brave and stunningly freeing of the nipple that is in the face of oppressive, patriarchal, institutionalized norms. It's just how they dress. Now, if you were raised in Japan, the yukata and the kimono are expected at certain events, and they're common enough to be seen out in public. Now, even in a city as cosmopolitan and international as New York or San Francisco, how often do you expect to actually just see somebody walking around town in a kimono? There is also the culture that we live in, the books and the stories and the media that we see. We're going to see certain historical things depending on where you live. You read about Victorian times and the fashion that the women wear. You see 50s outfits in different TV shows and part of Americana. And even with this, it is still entirely different to be familiar with them as part of history than it would be to just see people wearing these things on a regular, like when you just go to the grocery store. So something topical here is I just finished listening to the audiobook of Naked Sun by Isaac Asimov. The main setting of this is a planet called Solaris that's been settled by humans who just rely on robots so much that they hardly ever see each other anymore. They mostly rely on this thing called viewing, which is some holographic tridimensional type of technology that gives a projection of the person. So from childhood on, they stop seeing each other. I'm talking about in person where light rays bounce off of somebody's skin or clothes and directly into your ocular nerves and go to your brain in a process that way, in a personal way, to this viewing through this machine. To the point where the viewing is so impersonal that they have no problem with getting naked, disrobing, or just being viewed nude in that kind of sense. So I've been listening to a lot of sci-fi recently, and I just thought of how a lot of these sci-fi writers are actually more like modern-day prophets, because they talk about things that kind of happened or are happening right now in the sense of how the internet may make somebody more detached from conversation or from viewing things. So back to the main topic here. What I'm trying to get at is the way one relates to the outfit and the person wearing that outfit and how it's actually taken in can give some insight and important context to how you feel about what that person is wearing. So what is it exactly that I'm trying to get at with this whole video or presentation? I've taken some time to think of what made me, I don't want to say quite uncomfortable, it's not really the proper word here, but there's something off-putting when I see someone in a hijab and some of these other outfits associated with Muslim women. Now, I looked into it, why do they wear these things, because I like kind of finding out the reasons, because mostly when I find out information about things, it makes things make more sense. There's no contradictions. So as I said before, there's some Muslim association with these outfits. So I looked at the proper place one would to find these kind of associations, the source, the dogma. And is there anything in their dogma that says a woman should dress in these outfits? Now, of course, I didn't expect to find diagrams of outfits and things like this, but there wasn't anything in there about clothing. Even the Christian Bible has more about blends like polyester and things like this. But anyway, there were things about modesty and the tendency of men and males to be able to succumb to their more base and carnal urges. So there is some expectation of females to be aware of this and kind of be more modest and not inflame this desire in the men. Now, we are a sexually dimorphic species, so I do understand there are different sexual strategies in general between the males and females, and males are more overtly sexually aggressive, if you will. So there was nothing in the actual books and source material that this religion was based in, no edicts from their supreme being. And I don't know if the Mormon thing, they have the Mormon underpants thing, is that actually in the Mormon Bible? I don't know. Somebody let me know in the comment section or I might go look. But back to this. So if it wasn't there, what else could I look at to find this information from? Now, Muslim isn't a race, but the religion of Islam was based in a certain location and did spread to the rest of the world from there. It still finds its home in the Middle East, in that area. So I looked into that, and there are very good environmental reasons for why the women in this area would wear these kind of outfits. Now, for very many sensible biological and evolutionary reasons, the fertility shown by female youth and beauty is something that's found to be very valuable, both by women and men, in many societies. So we live in this culture where males make overtures and offer resources in order to get access to that valuable resource of female fertility that's shown by the youth and the beauty. Now, yes, this is kind of a patriarchal thing, but I consider it to be more of a benign thing that just makes sense in the cultures and societies that it happens in. Because you can go and look at the Tuareg people, who are a nomadic tribe that still exists in the Sahara Desert, and they are matriarchal. So in that sense, the females are the ones who are more sexually, I want to say, not aggressive, but initiative. They're the ones who propose to the men, and they're the ones that walk around with their faces covered as they go around the desert doing their Tuareg things. I'm currently living in Nairobi, which has a much higher Muslim population than any other city that I've lived in. Now, with this in mind, I'll see different levels of Muslim garb or outfits as I walk around, from somebody wearing traditional Western clothes with just a headscarf to the full-on niqab where it's just the eye slits showing. You'll even go as far to the gym. You'll have people in the gym just wearing kind of more looser sweatpants, a loose kind of sports fit outfit with the headscarf covering their hair. Whereas I've seen Hindu women who wear more the traditional saris when they come in to look at the gym or when they come into the gym, but when they actually come to work out, they don't have a sports sari type of outfit. They just more wear the traditional westernized sportswear. So this to me shows that there is normally some higher aspect of why the Muslim women decide to wear what they're wearing or are wearing what they're wearing versus people in other kinds of faiths or cultures. Now, in addition, in Muslim majority countries, they have female-only gym hours or female-only gyms, and this is actually being proposed to much consternation by some people in some European countries due to recent immigration traits, but that's an entirely different video and presentation. But coming back to this thing, so I don't know, in that kind of situation, in these female-only gyms, if anybody knows, I guess you could probably find out online, but I wonder, the woman who is wearing this sports hijab, that Nike super sports hijab thing that came out, people are like, oh, why is Nike making stuff for women in hijabs? But anyway, do the women in the women-only gyms wear the sports hijab? Or do they just wear your typical sports bra or your typical westernized outfits because they don't mind other women seeing them not in hijab, even if it's in public, because it's just a gym? I don't know. Or does this modesty thing go further where it's also, we don't want the competition or people comparing, like, oh, is this woman fitter than me? Is this body part more? So does that go further than just for men? So back to the whole gym situation. I'm at the gym working out. This other woman is there. She's got her headscarf, her baggier clothes. She's also there trying to work out. Am I supposed to sit there and look at her and say, oh, this is an example of Bronze Age cult oppression? But then when I get back home and I go online and I see this woman posting herself eating an entire cake, and I'm supposed to think that, oh, this health at any size, sex positive, gross obesity is the same as being thick, fat accepted, half head shaping, hair dyeing, multiple peers having, tattoo sporting, everything is sexist, patriarchy destroying warrior extraordinaire, Western female is supposedly an example of peak liberation? Am I supposed to think that this woman at the gym, who may be a product of, or actually in that polygamous marriage, is being oppressed by that arrangement, whereas that Western woman whose polyamorous lifestyle is being lauded by all sorts of popular media outlets as the double plus good simple socialization of sexuality? So imagine I was in line to watch that live action remake of The Lion King, and there was two families in front of me, two women with their kids. One of them is wearing the hijab, and another one is wearing maybe a tube top and Daisy Dukes. If I looked at these women and I was like, yeah, what's that all about? Would I be slut shaming the one in the tube top and the Daisy Dukes? And in the case of the Muslim woman in hijab, would that be slave chaining? Or is this just both of them deciding whatever level of modesty and comfort that they have in public? So my current personal position on the hijab and other stereotypically Muslim outfits is it goes further than just simple case of oppression. It's not just the outfit itself. As you've seen in the drawings, there are other outfits from different times and cultures that cover as much skin as your typical hijab. There are other outfits that hide and obscure, if you will, as much of the female shape as any of these Muslim outfits. In Nairobi, as I mentioned, there's a large number of Hindus and other Indians, people from the Indian subcontinent, and they have their cultural saris. And with their saris, with some of them, there's a section of the midriff where the midriffs are shown. Now, there's typical Western outfits that don't have the midriff shown. There's actually places where it's like, showing the midriff is too much skin. Yet here you have Indian women, older grandmas, heavier set women, and they walk around with the saris with their midriffs showing. Now, on to contemporary African fashion. Some of you might have seen some of the styles of the things in the Black Panther movie, and those are close to things that people actually do wear in African cities and towns in the current year. So with this one, a lot of skin is covered. They normally have headdresses when they're actually dressed up to go to events and things like that. So it's kind of similar actual covering of the body as you have in these hijabs. So what is the main thing that sets off a notification or a small bell in my mind when I see women wearing these outfits? I think it has something to do with the association to the ideology. Now, it's not as strong as it was in the past or wondering where it's coming from, but these are just my thoughts and ideas around it, where I'm at right now in my life. And let me know what you guys think below. So there are things in the actual dogma of certain ideologies that instruct believers to treat people who think like I do and do things that I do in a rather negative way. I've seen countries where this ideology runs a state that treat people like me in rather negative ways. And this goes further because I'll walk around and I'll hear the call to prayer, and it gives me a different feeling than hearing church bells, for instance. Now you add the fact that there seems to be a lot more people who currently follow the Muslim religion in a much more fundamental sense than the Christians do. Now, wearing some of these clothes, even though, as I mentioned, I don't think they necessarily have that direct religious connotation to it, but some of them are signaling their personal religious beliefs. And from that already puts me in a position where I think the chances of me getting along with this person are fewer than if they weren't religious. And this carries on to also people who are signaling to other people of their preferred faith by walking around with the world's most famous torture symbol, the crucifix, on a chain around their neck. Although in the case with the crucifix, that's normally more directly of the religion. But again, in many cases, you will see people wearing the crucifix for fashion, and I'm sure there's also a lot of other people out there who wear the Muslim garb not because they're actually devoutly Muslim, but because they're used to it as a fashion. So winding this all down, I'm not saying that the hijab is the same thing as a nun wearing her habit, but is it that much different? And I'm not saying Islam is the same as Christianity or the Judaism that came before it, but how different are these three Abrahamic religions? What I am saying, though, is I find it kind of interesting that you have this certain vocal minority of people that claim that the West needs to return to the past. The same people that claim that, the West is decaying because of the lack of religious morals. The same people that will say, the West needs more Jesus in the lives of folks. These same people will seem to be triggered or complain about women who dress in essentially the same way that Jehovah's baby mama / daughter creation made in his image / betrothed teen virgin once did, back long time ago in Bethlehem. So there we have it. Some more questions on this whole situation. If the whole thing is not about oppression and it's instead about sexual modesty, then if any Muslims will listen to this or people who do this or might be aware of this, I'm just going to answer this. Why is it that you have girls in their single digits of age wearing things like hijab, or I haven't seen the full niqab with the whole slit situation, but I've seen them in the full hijab in single digit ages. So I'm talking like seem to be 5 and around that age. I'm like, okay, what's that all about? And if it is more about practicality than it is about this oppression or modesty or anything, then why is it that you have families where the males have adopted the fully Western fashions, but you still have the females wearing this traditional, cultural, anti-elemental, originating garb? Okay, that's it for now for this presentation. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section if you thought of any of these things, or if this changed your mind or anything, or if there's other things you thought of. Let me know if you had conversations about this. Is this too offensive? Do you think this is going to be taken down? Do you think nobody should listen to these things? What else? There's the Thomas Sowell 3 right now and some merchandise. You can find links below to the store where you can get this shirt. And Thomas Sowell is an economist that created these 3 questions to ask about politics and economics. I like applying them on different parts of life. So here I'll apply them to the hijab. When you see a woman in this and you make a judgment on what that woman's life is like, I want you to ask, compared to what? Compared to what other woman's outfit or life is this woman supposedly oppressed? Next question is, at what cost? We see a woman like this and we say, if she isn't oppressed, she'd just wear anything else. First of all, we don't know what she wears when she's at home. Second, there could be an aspect of she just enjoys being in a culture and community where that's the outfit they wear. I know there's people who go to church who technically aren't that religious. There's actually people who are avowed atheists who will go to church because they like the communal aspect of that. Now, I think you can leave that and find a stronger community, but sometimes that cost of jumping between that thing that you know and you've built around you to this other situation may be a lot harder than you think. How many things do you personally believe or disagree with your general in-group that you don't bring up because you feel you might be ostracized from that in-group? So with those thoughts and things that I had there at the at what cost question, that also answers the what hard evidence do you have that this woman is oppressed by wearing what she's wearing. If you look at a nun, do people think, oh, that person's oppressed? When you look at a Buddhist monk, do you think, oh, that person is oppressed? When you look at those old Russian babushka ladies, do you think they're oppressed? No, that's just kind of the outfit that these people choose to wear. So that's it. I'm at the end of this. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. Going to be more content coming out soon. You can check out the channel and find other things. Like I said below, like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments. Till next time, goodbye.